everybody. Welcome to the University of Arizona's Wonderhouse on a beautiful day in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest. I'm Dean Gary Packard. I'm the Dean of the College of Applied Science and Technology, and we're going to be in this room from now until about 3:30 with a little 30-minute break in between to talk to you about cyber and cybersecurity and what it means to your world and how we are approaching that topic at the University of Arizona. So we encourage you to stick around, spend some time with us. We'll have some Q&A going on in both of these talks, and at 2:30 we're going to have a panel of experts from federal, state, government, as well as corporations and academia who are doing cybersecurity together. So we're looking forward to have this conversation with you today. I'm going to start this talk by talking a little bit about how I got in this business. And I'm just going to tell you all up front, I am not a cybersecurity expert, but I work with them every single day. I actually started my journey, and you have to go all the way back to 1972. And that's when I took my first commercial airplane ride. And that taught me that I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. In 1972, cyber was not a thing. And so that wasn't a career field that was even available for me. But I went on an airplane ride, Delta Airlines, from Detroit, Michigan to Florida to go on a family vacation. A middle schooler, first time I'd ever been on an airplane. And during that time flying, and some of you who are a little bit younger won't get this, but you just walked up to the airplane. There was no TSA pre-check. There was no anything. In fact, your entire family could walk you to the gate and even see you onto the airplane back in 1972. But the coolest part was the cockpit doors were open when you were in flight. And as a young 12-year-old boy who was fascinated with technology, I had a chance to go up and look at my first airplane cockpit I'd ever seen in my life. And I walked back to my seat after looking at all the dials and talking to the pilots and getting my very own Delta pilot wings that I pinned onto my shirt. And I sat down next to my mom and I said, I want to do that when I grow up. I didn't know how to do that, though. I came from a small town in Michigan, but my Uncle Ken had just gotten back from Vietnam. He was enlisted in the Air Force. He had served in Vietnam. So we went and visited my Uncle Ken and my Aunt Marilyn, and I said, Uncle Ken, you're in the Air Force. You must be a pilot. How do I get to be a pilot? He wasn't a pilot. He was enlisted. He said, but I work with pilots, and most of the pilots I know went to the Air Force Academy. No idea what that was. And so I went to my middle school guidance counselor the next week, and I said, I need to go to the Air Force Academy. I have no idea what that was. She had no idea what that was, but to her credit, she went over to the high school and said, do you have a catalog for the Air Force Academy? So again, for those of you who were born here in the digital native world, we didn't used to go online to find out about colleges. We had to get a catalog from the guidance office and read through it. She brought me that catalog, and I read it cover to cover in middle school. And I set my sights on the Air Force Academy. Long story short, 10 years later, I graduated from the Air Force Academy and entered pilot training and became a pilot for the United States Air Force. What does that have to do with cyber? That journey that I took was a journey of curiosity. As we talk about here, it's a journey of wonder. And it started me on a pathway where I continued to follow these different ways of how am I going to wonder about my future. What led to next was I started pilot training. I ended up being an instructor pilot, and I had to figure out what kind of pilot I wanted to be. Well, what does that mean? It wasn't whether I wanted to fly big airplanes or little airplanes. It's, do I want to be an old pilot or a bold pilot? There's an old adage in flying that there's old pilots and bold pilots, but there aren't very many old, bold pilots. And I decided I'd rather be that old pilot than the bold pilot. And that creates a conflict sometimes with your flying, because some of the things you might want to do in an airplane aren't always the safest things that you want to do. And you've got to learn how to make good decisions and balance risk against the safety of what you're doing. And I had a little statement under my desk that said, never allow flying to become so routine that you do it automatically. And that kind of guided my flying throughout my career. Over time, that became a very short 3-word statement that said, fly safe, smart, and legal. Is what that turned into. I used that when I was a commander to teach safety to my pilots. I still use it today. And I use it, quite frankly, when I pull out this thing and I think about what do I want to do with it? How do I operate in cyberspace safe, smart, and legal? In flying, safety hasn't always been at the top of the list. If you go back to pilot training in the 1940s, pre-World War I, we actually had 15,000 fatalities teaching pilots how to fly leading up to World War II. Think about that for a minute. 15,000 people. Last year in military aviation, that number was less than 10. That's a pretty dramatic shift in safety. How did we improve safety in flying? There's really 4 things that we focus on. One is we have to have better technology. Airplanes today are safer than they were 60, 70 years ago. The technology is reliable, the engines are reliable, the maintenance schedules are better, we keep better track of the equipment. We have equipment for pilots so that they can see where other airplanes are so we don't run into each other, for example. Technology has helped us be safer in the air. The second thing we've done is we've improved training. One time in learning how to fly an airplane, your first lesson was there's the airplane, there's how to turn it on, take it off. If you land and you don't crash, then you pass lesson number 1. That was pretty much it. Now we have advanced simulations and ground training, and you go through a lot of time training before you get in the airplane. You may not know this, but how many of you flew to Austin to be at South by Southwest? Okay, a lot of you. How many have flown at least once in the last year in this room? Most of us, right? Do you know that the first officer, the co-pilot basically of that airline, could, on that airplane, that could be the first time they've ever sat live in a seat in that airplane in their entire life. A lot of people go, oh, that's not very safe. Actually, it's incredibly safe because the training is that good. And they do a lot of safeguards. They'll have a second pilot up there just in case they need one. But they've gone through training that is so good that you can get in that airplane and for the first time, without ever flying that particular airplane, fly it safely. That's important. So we've done better training. We've changed the policies and regulations. We didn't used to regulate air traffic. That wouldn't work today. And so we have rules. We have the Federal Aviation Administration. We have air traffic control. We have guidelines and procedures that pilots have to fly. They have to go through extensive medical examinations to fly you from point A to point B. But the fourth thing, and this is the most important thing, we've changed our culture. We actually think about aviation as a safe mode of transportation. And we understand that just like you put your seatbelt on in the car, when you get in that airline, what do you do when you first sit down? You put your seatbelt on. You don't wait for somebody to tell you, most of us, unless you're conscious, and I'm not putting that thing on right now. But you will put your seatbelt on. That didn't used to be routine. And so we've changed the culture of aviation. So what does that have to do with this topic of cybersecurity and the conflict in cybersecurity? If you have one of these, pull it out for me for a second. I'm not going to make you open it up and do anything. If you come back here later, I'm going to have you do this again. But right now, I just want you to hold it up. I can't see real well the lights, but I don't see very many people that don't have one of these things in their pocket right now. If I told you you can have one of these things, but gave you a great big long laundry list of things you had to do before you could open it up and use it, how many of you would like that? You want to open the box, make sure it's charged, plugged it in, transfer all your data from your last device to this device in just a couple of minutes and be done with it, right? That's convenience. That convenience says that what the manufacturer does is turn everything on here and makes it vulnerable cybersecurity-wise, and you have to go turn it off. Safety versus convenience. That's the cybersecurity conflict. Do you want to be an old cybersecurity person or a bold cybersecurity person? Because they don't always go hand in hand together. That's the why. That's the importance of what we do. But I'm not the cybersecurity expert. But the good news is I have the cybersecurity expert with me here today. Mr. Jason Denno, who is the Executive Director of the Cyber Convergence Center at the College of Applied Science and Technology, my college at the University of Arizona, is here with me today. He built our environment, he built our program, he designed how we go about keeping you secure in cyberspace. So I'm going to pass this over to Jason and let him talk to you about how we get there from A to B. Jason, Great. It's all yours.
Thank you, Gary. So, very nice introduction. Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. I'm going to jump right into some slides here. So, everybody today either transits or lives within cyberspace. And let's face it, almost everybody is living within cyberspace now. Very few people transit it anymore. So when you look at cyberspace really breaks down to zeros and ones, right? But all those zeros and ones are not created equal, and they don't operate the same way. So without getting too technical, when you start looking at them, we've got these kinetic zeros and ones, and these logical zeros and ones, and these zeros and ones that now represent persona, right? And we now have this cyber war that's been ongoing for some time that we don't even like to admit we're in. Never mind engage in it, right? Lots of things happen in the background, but in this cyber war and those logical zeros and ones, you probably think about the data that might be stolen, or the malware that's downloaded, the ransomware that's taken over your machine, the accounts that have been breached. That's what we see in the cyber war side of this. But we also see a kinetic war. You've probably heard about the Colonial Pipeline shutdown, or the poisoning of the water system down in Tampa right before the Super Bowl, right? And these kinetic zeros and ones, what's happening is actors within cyberspace are able to manipulate physical devices. They can turn off generators. They can turn off water purification systems. They can shut off runway lights, right? Which makes it harder to land that plane on the first one, by the way. But then you also have an information war happening. So and this has been going on for a long time outside of cyberspace, but now within cyberspace, all of the misinformation, disinformation that's happening, and the computational propaganda, when one person says something that might be wrong, it may or may not stick. When a small group does it, it may or may not stick. But when tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of accounts online are trending on social media or leaving a large group of comments on stories and things like that, that information war, that's all now being done at machine speed with AI and with machine learning. And it's being done extraordinarily convincingly. Right? And we can get into deep fakes and the rest of that if you like during our question and answer. But what we really see is this conflict is causing a lot of problems, especially financially. So last year, $6 trillion in cybercrime in the US alone. I'm sorry, globally. $6 trillion globally. That is 33 billion accounts last year breached. That's a huge number here. You start looking at 2.7 million hours just to clean that up after the breach, having to go back in and reset those accounts and redo those servers and re-put that data back. That is a lot of man hours to try to deal with this. And this is for 1 year. This wasn't for a decade. 80% of these attacks usually have a phishing component. We just saw a report come out from Verizon for last year that said 82% of every one of the breaches that they looked at and analyzed had a human element in it. So we keep clicking things. We should stop that, right? This is projected to top $10.5 trillion annually by 2025. Right now, we're on pace for $8 trillion. That is $1 million roughly per day. Every day. I'm sorry, per hour. It's almost 22 million a day. So when you look at that, that's the scale of what's happening just on the crime side, not even the attack sides, right? So now, when you come back in and you say, okay, let's look at the workforce. Of course, if this is a big problem, we had to have hired a whole bunch of people, right? Well, we got this shortfall going on right now. So if you look back in 2020, at the height of COVID, we had about 350,000 jobs in the US not filled in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity has been at 0% unemployment for over 8 years. We're approaching 9 years right now. It is one of the most secure careers you could ever have. So in 2020, 350,000 people weren't hired yet. And we're thinking, okay, well, this is popular. So there was a flood of training programs, a flood of degree programs, and you would think, we fixed this problem. Not so much. It got worse. So last year, we had 521,000 and change jobs open. And this problem is getting worse and worse and worse. 750,000 for 2022 is what we're looking at right now. Now, if you would say, well, the trend's getting worse, yes, the trend is getting worse. We're looking at over 800, approaching 900,000 open jobs just by 2025. But that's not what I'm actually worried about. Because the job that doesn't go open, whether if you're from a company or any organization, you say, I can't hire this position. I know I have risk here. I'm worried about the 980 some odd thousand people that are already employed. Because when you look at what goes on with cyber and employees, we got to talk about competency versus capacity. Just filling every job, that's a capacity issue. So the 980,000 people, and there are some incredible professionals out there, but we also have a lot of folks who took a test and all of a sudden became a cyber expert. And a company said, oh, I'm going to hire you. And now I'm cyber secure because I've got a cyber guy or 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever they need. But are you? Or are you in a false sense of security? So now, in our world, competence is the goal. You have to have somebody that truly can do what they should be able to do to protect this company, right? We need true knowledge, skills, and abilities. It can't just be that I've gone in and I've taken a test or I've been put in this position. We see this, quiet quitting thing going on in the world right now. But there's also this quiet hiring thing going on where we say, hey, I know you do this in our company, but you're going to be our new cyber guy too. So study up. Please don't let us get breached, okay? Because we don't want to lose our bank accounts. But what you really need is the skills so you can synthesize and analyze the problems that you see in front of you. The number one thing that we are seeing in the community right now is, can your professionals tell the difference between an event, just something that naturally occurs, or an incident? Am I being attacked? Is this dangerous? And because they can't tell that difference, because they don't have those knowledge, skills, and abilities, because they don't have those deep skills that they really need for this job, they miss it. And when they go miss it, we come back to this capacity fallacy here, right? Now, to put some scale to this, and these numbers have probably changed a little bit because they get reported and updated all the time. The average company for the last couple of years has taken about 270 days to find out they're breached. So 9 months before they go, oh, somebody's in here. I got to do something about this. Well, there was a nice report that came out, and I don't know if this was DHS or NSA, but they said, the Russians, when they secure a foothold in that first machine in your network, they can get across everything in your network in about 9 minutes. The Chinese are really slow. It takes them 30. So it takes us 9 months to figure out somebody's there, and it takes them minutes to get across the entire network once they've gained the credentials that they need. So capacity is not going to solve this problem. Bringing 10 more people in that can't see these things, can't understand what the observables look like when you're breached, that's not going to help you, but it is going to lure you into a false sense of security, and it could maybe be longer than 270 days before you find out. Maybe all of your critical data and customer data and private data is all removed by then. So every position filled does not equal cybersecurity. And you can't just buy it, right? You can't just say, oh, I'm going to just go randomly hire these 7 or 8 people and they're going to be my cyber team. There's a story somebody told me once, and I can't remember where I heard it, but it's kind of funny. So it's, you really want this deck in your backyard. So you go to Home Depot and you go buy the wood and you're like, I'm going to paint the deck too. So what color do I? All right, I bought that paint and I got the hammers and the nails and I got the cement to put it in. And you bring it all home and you put it in the backyard. You're like, man, I'm going to dinner. And because I'm hungry. And I go to dinner and I'm just sitting there thinking, I cannot wait to get home and sit on my deck. I might have a cigar, maybe a bourbon. This deck is going to be phenomenal. And you get home, and there's this pile of wood there. Cyber doesn't fix itself. Decks don't build themselves. This is a team sport that needs real professionals, needs to be thought out properly, and it can't just be relied upon of, I bought something, so I'm secure. There's a tendency in the industry right now of, well, I can just buy this firewall or this intrusion detection system or this new application. And you see companies and organizations that have hundreds of security tools that don't talk to each other, by the way, and nobody's watching them, or few people are watching them. So are they really working? So you can't buy security just like you can't buy a deck. So what do? Well, the first thing we did at University of Arizona is we said, we got to look at this paradigm. There's a problem here. There's about 2,500-ish programs, from training programs all the way to PhD programs, last time I looked, which arguably was a couple years ago, so that number has grown. So you start looking at them and you say, well, why can't this solve the problem? Well, there's education, right? Unlike us, I'll explain what we've done, but most educational institutions, they're way too high level. It's conceptual, it's philosophical, right? And the students can go out, they can get this wonderful degree that they pay whatever they pay to get, and they can go get this amazingly great job because there's all these open jobs. But this person right here that has nothing but education, they know the right words, they know the terminology, but they can't make it work. They can't, the gap from here's a philosophical component and a concept to I know how to employ it. I know how to defend my company with that. That is a big gap, and that's a huge failing in the paradigm of education. Now you've got training, and you could go to some place like SANS, probably the best training house out there right now, right? And again, this is not meant to be a slam on SANS. I think they do a really good job. But you're going to spend a week sitting in a chair with somebody talking to you, and then you're going to do a bunch of hands-on labs, and you're going to have a lot of the answers right there with you, and you're going to learn what we call buttonology. You're going to learn how to push the buttons, right? And you're going to learn why you should push the buttons. But when you do that, you're going to say, I know how to fix this. I know how to scan this. I know how to defend this. As soon as the this changes, everything breaks. Because you're only taught how to solve the problem in the class for the 1 week. You're not taught how to extrapolate that. So training becomes way too fragile. It's very brittle. When something changes, the ability for somebody who's got no other background to make that leap to the next thing is very difficult for them to do. And then there's certifications. This is my personal favorite. So they are a 100% necessary evil in this field. You must have them. You're probably not going to get employed without them. But a certification does one thing, it does one thing only, and it does it really well. It proves that the person who takes the test remembered enough information at the moment they took the test to pass the test. There's absolutely no ability to find out if they really know what they're doing, right? Now, we like to make a correlation that, well, if you have the certification, you must have this skill. But most of certifications, and this is starting to change, but most certifications are knowledge-based assessments. They're just fill-in-the-blank questions, yes or no questions, matching, whatever it may be. You're not really having to do much. And they are introducing some performance-based questions in, but again, this will always be the failing of, this is just a point in time. So, sounds like we've got a massive shortfall of people. We got a whole bunch of bad guys that are going to come steal our stuff, and none of these people here are the least bit prepared to defend, right? So, oh, button didn't work. Let me try that again. There we go. So, here's what University of Arizona did. We said, we see all these problems, and that doesn't work for a university like University of Arizona. We need to be the bleeding edge of this solution. We need to be the ones that can make this problem go away. So we built this hybrid active learning model that essentially combines the best of training, the best of education, and yes, you have to get some certifications still, but we tried to reduce that, and then we added components like critical thinking and research and simulation-based education. But we still do the concepts, right? You still have your readings and your lectures. You still learn the terminology and the concepts. But then we start providing these methodologies, right? We kind of take a little bit from the training world, and we say, let me show you how to apply this concept in this methodology. But that would be fragile too. So instead of just saying, hey, follow this steps and you're good all the time, we do everything in learn, practice, test, or crawl, walk, run, however you'd like to refer to it. So when we teach you these and we teach you the methodology, we say, okay, let's practice that methodology. When we go to practice, we all do this all as real-world scenarios. We change the scenarios so much, it breaks the methodology. We do that on purpose because that synthesize and analyze is exactly the learning objective that we have overlaid over the entire thing here. We need to create critical thinkers. So when I change this methodology from the time you learn to the time you practice, nothing works. You have to synthesize what's going on in front of you, analyze it, and change your methodology and modify it to make it work. Now, you could probably imagine when we go to test, we break the methodology again. Because again, that ability to synthesize and analyze is the critical learning objective for us. Now, that critical thinking, as we go through this process, we'll give a concept out and then we'll say, okay, I want you need to go do research on this, right, on this topic. And then I need you to explain to me in that research, how do you employ this or deploy this to use it offensively or defensively? And I'll get to offense in a second. But the whole point is that you need to kind of understand how it fits into the world. Because if you just know it and know the methodology and can figure out how to move it, but you don't really understand how it fits, you don't have the context. And that context is extremely important. So real-world employment comes next. And we do that in two ways. We do that first through simulation-based exercises, right? Some people would call it a little bit of gamification, and we're more on the real-world side of gamification. But essentially, as we go through here, these real-world scenarios, you can't say, well, Bob does this and Alice, we need to create scenarios that are realistic, that you're going to come in, that you can understand and you can, see yourself in that scenario. But we do that also with real-world tools as well, and we put people on actual tools with real data against real targets. That way they've done it with us before they move on. But then values, this is one of the places where I think the University of Arizona excels. If we create the greatest cyber professional in the world, technically, but we can't trust them, they are 100% useless to the organization. As a matter of fact, they're a danger to the organization. So we have to actually make sure we instill those values. We actually have a class called 329, our Cyber Law, Ethics, and Policy. We joke around that that's our, hey, please don't go Anakin Skywalker on us class, right? So we want to make sure that they're staying with their values and so forth. So, but as you can see, this learning through solving problems, right? We need the student to be constantly engaged with the problem that they're solving. When my son, went through high school, he went through calculus. He got an A in calculus. And I was working through something with calculus with him, and I'm like, how do you not know this? You got an A in the class. He didn't get it. He could, he could understand it. But when he went to physics the next year, he was doing advanced calculus and completely understanding it because he was applying it to the problem to solve it. So that's what we do, very similar across all of our cyber. And then we put the entire why in context. Why are you doing this? And how does it fit into the world? Because if you're going to be able to synthesize and analyze and extrapolate and change these methodologies, you have to be nimble in being able to see what's going on and be able to change things as they move forward. So we are a Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Operations, cyber defense and cyber research for the National Security Agency at the University of Arizona. I initially ran the cyber operations. I think Josh Pauly, the new department head's around here somewhere. He's the poor guy who's going to now do everything we say. But the cyber operations designation is also the offensive sides of the school. So we teach offense and defense. And as a matter of fact, we teach offense first, because if you learn everything there is to know about football on the defensive side, you learn every play, you learn every position, you learn how to tackle, how to cover, how to do all of that. But you've never seen an offense, ever. And the first offense you see is young Tom Brady, by the way. And he comes out and goes into spread, you're done. He's going to run the field with you. So all of these cyber actors, they're young Tom Brady's. So you have to understand what the attack looks like. You have to be able to do the attack to see where the attack's fragile. So you can see what's coming. So when you're on the defense, you know what to look for. You know what the attack looks like. You know what that chain looks like. So we had to go build Cyberapolis. This is an unstructured, synthetic live environment. It's essentially the internet in a box, right? We have over 100 different companies. We have our own social media platforms. We have online news agencies, power companies, water companies, banks, hospitals, you name it, we have it. We had to do this because if you teach offensive cyber operations on the open internet, your students go to prison. Now, that hurts student retention. My dean starts yelling at me. The president is probably going to fire me if I start sending all his students to prison. It doesn't really work out, right? So we needed this area. We needed this thing that allows us to give you, here's what it all feels like. Here's what its reality looks like, but in a contained box, so we could do this. So we built this environment, and we drove it with the Proteus AI. And we have 15,000 virtual personas that are inside of our environment. They conduct transactions in the stores. They email each other. They web browse. They leave postings in social media. They leave comments on news stories. They do everything a human does, and they do it so well. Several government agencies have been incapable of telling whether it was one of my bots or a human. So we made this as lifelike as possible. And then the most important part of this is, unlike a lot of systems that are out there that do provide training and platforms for cyber, we purpose-built this. This was reverse engineered from what we wanted to teach and what we want to do. We built this in-house at the university. We run, I would say, the largest cyber virtual learning environment in the nation at this point. The DoD systems that are out there right now that have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on have not caught up to us yet. They're not quite as robust as we are. So this is how we implement that hybrid active learning model. So when you get down to it and you step back and you look at this, right, this is a battleground. And, you know, I could have put the Chinese flag up here or the North Korean flag or the Iranian flag or heck, half of our allies, right? Everybody is constantly testing each other in cyberspace. Most people have no idea this is going on. Most people that do know that it's going on would just like to rather ignore it. Because the way we stand right now, we haven't admitted we're in this war. And there are people working on it, but not us as a society, right? So, the number one question I was asked by my students all the time was, how long is this field going to be hot? How long is this going to be a good career for me? And I simply ask, pull your phone out. Do you know every single process running on your phone? And are they legitimate or not? Because if a hacker's on your phone and your battery doesn't die, your phone doesn't heat up, and it doesn't slow down, how do you know they're there? And the answer is, kind of like Gary, you need to have cyber people, right? So, Gary, if you come back out, you know, if Gary's phone's sitting right there, I'm not saying a student might be on his phone right now. We're not. Don't worry, Gary. So
I never know if my students or my faculty are doing anything to me, to be honest with you. So
with this is a battleground, and we are consumers in this battleground. And Gary, when you buy your next phone, do you want it to be slow?
No.
Do you want it to have the battery die right away?
No.
No features on it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
None
then
whatsoever.
You want to wait like 8 or 9 months for it, and you want to pay extra for it,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
So.
No, not really.
Congratulations, Gary. You, like me,
Yep.
We are the problem.
Yes, we are.
And I hate to admit it, you guys are too. The consumer is the problem because everybody wants better, faster, cheaper. And when we rush the products, and I think Gary was talking about how they're open all the time when he first came in, right? When you rush a product to the market to win market share, they have to be easy to use so they're not defended, and you're not going to waste time and money on testing, or at least not extensive testing, which means there's going to be riddled with vulnerabilities that you're going to see. So at this point, we are making this problem worse, but we, University of Arizona, have a solution. We're the silver lining in this cloud.
Absolutely. It's a big problem. We know it's a big problem. We're working on it. We need lots of partners. In fact, our panel later today is going to be that team of teens discussion of how are we partnering across different sectors to work on that. We've got about...
Gary, if I may, because I think this would be great. If you could explain to them what we've done beyond cyber with our other degrees to infuse it for the security.
Absolutely.
Well.
Absolutely. So Jason makes a really good point there that this is fine. I can go sit around with all my cyber students and they get it. But I have students in other programs. So for example, we have a regional commerce program, we call it. It's basically an applied business degree at the bachelor's level. And it's focused a lot on rural business because we're a part of the land grant mission of the University of Arizona. We have our college headquartered in Sierra Vista, a small rural community about 10 miles from the southern border of the United States. And so rural America and bridging the digital divide, these are all important things to us. And if I want to start up a business in, say, Sierra Vista or some small town in Texas or wherever you happen to be from, how are we teaching those people to be cyber secure in those businesses? And so what we've done in our Cyberapolis, and we're going to do this with some more programs, we were talking to the journalism school recently about this. What we've done is we've taken and brought the marketing and the advertising and the hiring and the business management into those virtual companies. So what happens is our business students in one of their classes, we've actually created a simulation there where we can adjust the market conditions so we can make it whatever kind of market inflationary tactics we want to play with. But the key thing is they buy the virtual business and they hire the virtual personas. We have 15,000 AI-driven people. They have to hire them. They apply for the job through the AI, through a LinkedIn and an Indeed kind of website that they go to. The students have to hire them. They have to come up with their business plans, and then the bots come and do the shopping. Right? So our cyber students are sitting in the background. What do you think they're doing? They're now taking a synthetic environment, and it has a real-world person in there, which complicates the environment and makes it even more like the real world. And the more we do that, every day when you wake up, these students, that world has changed. The bots have made more posts. They've done transactions. They bought bicycle parts and all of that. And so now we got students in the loop working through this. So it makes the students in business more cyber savvy. So when they actually graduate and start that business, it's on their mind of, oh yeah, I made that mistake in school. I'm not going to make that mistake over here. I was talking to a woman yesterday who was out on the patio chatting with her, and she's down in Houston and looking to expand a business up here in Austin, selling table linens and fancy linens for catering events. And she's created it so she's shipping those around the country. So she'll put together the package. You want to put together your birthday party, your wedding party, or whatever. She'll package that up for you, custom and design it for you, package it to you, send it to you, then you turn around and return, ship it back to her when you're done with it. Pretty cool business model. That's entirely a cyber-based business, right? How are we helping that person like that actually be cyber safe? But the other thing it does, it makes our cyber students more looking like, hey, I don't need to protect this guy over here because he kind of knows what he talks about. But the dean, he doesn't have a clue. I'm the customer you got to think about, right? You know, Jason's job is to keep me safe and not do some things I don't do wrong because I don't think like him. right? So we need both sides of that coin. I need the business student to help the cyber student think like the business student, and I need the cyber student to help the business student think like the cyber student. That's how we integrate and bring it together.
And that influx of cyber content across the other curriculum in the college helps all these new employees going into the workforce be more cyber aware, be more aware of their posture, and try to improve their cyber posture. So even these other courses that aren't in our cyber program are benefiting from the cyber work that we're doing.
So as Jason and I can talk about this all day long, but I kind of like to hear what they have to say. So what questions do you have for us? I know there's some out there. Don't be shy. Don't make me call on you. I'm a professor. I will do that. We've got a microphone over here, if you don't mind, so we can get it on the video.
So, excuse me, I lost my voice. What do the incoming students look like in terms of their underlying skill set? Do they come in with interest in anthropology? Do they come in with interest in mathematics? What kind of people are you bringing to the table?
That's a great question. Let me start with just the general college makeup, and then he's got a couple of really good stories about some of our successful students that I think will drive the point home. So our college, one of the unique parts about the University of Arizona's program at our college is that we're a transfer-only college. So 88% of my students transfer to us from community colleges. And so they tend to be older working adults. Our average student age is 31. They are more diverse than the University of Arizona overall population. They are much more likely to be a first-generation college student, and they're much more likely to be Pell Grant eligible, which is a sign of economic ability to afford college. So we're trying to get to a student body that wouldn't normally go to a school like the University of Arizona and get this kind of a degree. So it's a great part of the University of Arizona's portfolio, and we're very grateful the U of A supports us in bringing that diverse student body into the University of Arizona. And they come from all different degrees. So we can transfer, depending on your community college background, up to 75 credits. So what that means in college lingo is that's 5 semesters worth of coursework, which leaves you only 3 sometimes to finish with us, which makes it much more affordable and accessible for students. So they're an incredibly diverse group of people, not only in terms of their makeup, but in their academic background. Some of them, as Jason likes to say, can't even spell cyber when they walk in our door, and we can still get them to the finish line. So I'll let you pick it up from there and talk a little bit about that.
And that's a perfect example. As Gary said, we've got this broad group of students that are mostly non-traditional, but we have traditional students too. But as I was mentioning to somebody earlier today, about a year and a half ago, we graduated a 16-year-old Doogie Howser kid, right? I mean, he was incredible. One of our best students we've ever had. And we have a 69-year-old in the program right now, too. They come from all walks of life. And usually, as they're coming back in as working professionals, they're either trying to level up or change careers. And the change career part's the most important. We've built this 0-semester kind of capability in where we can take anybody from any degree with any background and rapidly prepare them to be successful in our program. So our 2 best students in my mind, after 6.5 years of this right now, were an English major and a biochemist. And the funny thing is our female students usually do better than our male students because for some reason they have a much better ability to see trends and see patterns, right? Which is great for threat hunting. But when you look at those 2 students, the English major, he graduated and went off, and he's running a security operations center at a massive company in Phoenix right now. And they told him, well, you know, when you come in, you're new, we're going to have you start off at nights, and then maybe in a couple months we can get you on days. 2 weeks later, he was their training supervisor, because they realized he was smarter than any of their other employees. 2 months later, he was running it, everything. Our biochemist was trading his services as a handyman at his apartment complex for rent with a handful of kids. And now he went through our program, decided to take a commission in the Air Force. He's now an offensive cyber operator at the National Security Agency running an offensive team protecting our nation. He's been there for about years. So 3 years he went from a biochemistry degree to leading our nation. So I think we're really successful in taking anybody. We do find that the people with other skills other than just computer skills tend to do really, really well because they can see the world in something other than just zeros and ones, and they can apply that to their background.
Yeah, that's a really good point at the end that I'll just finish and we'll go back to another question, is that what I've learned since I've been with this college as the dean is, and it really suits me well, because I'm a behavioral scientist. I'm a developmental psychologist by training, so I see the human side of things. And to have somebody sitting on the technology side in our college and other people sitting on the human side, we really get the right perspective, and that's what we're after in that student population that we're after. So art students do really well in our program.
Yeah, diversity of thought's extremely important in this field, because otherwise you get into groupthink and you'll miss those incidents.
So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but yeah, it's all over the map for us, and we like it that way. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Jason. Thanks for the great presentation. I'm at MIT, and Jason and I got a chance to catch up yesterday. But what I'm really interested in, it's a fabulous program, and I love what you're doing. And I love that you simulated a really complex environment. Tell me about involvement with real companies in your program, because I'm sure you've got companies that want your graduates and are standing by for you to graduate 10 times what you've already graduated.
Yeah, I believe and please don't quote me on this because I may have the number wrong because they add very often. I believe we have 64 corporate partners right now that either pay for part of, if not all of, the tuition for their students. That's just our corporate partner program. As you know, about 89% of cyber jobs are in the civilian world. They're not in the government. The other 11% are in government, roughly. And we see a demand for our students in both locations. We are the largest CYSP program in the nation. It's the Cyber Scholarship Program. And what that program is the Department of Defense looks across every single university in the U.S. each year and looks at what students can I bring into the federal workforce. And we've been as high as 25% of all the students taken by the Department of Defense in a single year come from our program. We're typically 4 or 5 times more, sought after than the next graduate. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I'll add on that real quick. It's a great question. Thank you. Is that Jason talked about we have 200 corporate students right now in our program out of about 1,800 total students, and that's growing all the time. But we see it on both ends, both the input end of the corporations wanting to get their students into the program, but on the output end, not just in terms of jobs, but one of the biggest things I get asked, do you have interns? There are companies that want our students to intern in their companies, and we provide, so we have built into our program, there's a capstone experience for all of our students so they can do those internships, and that's how we can get them that real world experience before they graduate. So, yeah, absolutely.
And we have a really simple standard for our academics, and that's all based on our graduate. When one of our graduates walks into a room and there's 20 people that are getting ready to interview for the job, and they go, oh, you're from Arizona? The rest of you may leave. Yeah. Right? That's when we can go into maintenance mode. Until then, every single day we got to make these programs better.
Yeah.
Do I have to live in Arizona so I go to the program?
No, you don't. We are 100% online. In fact, you don't even have to have really good bandwidth to be in our program. This whole environment that Jason is, he'll give you all how many refresh rates and so on we need to have. I don't know that stuff, but I know this, that I can get into our system hotspotting from my phone just about anywhere I've ever been. Because we ship you a virtual desktop. We ship you everything you need to know. All you need is a VPN connection that gets you on board so we can keep it secure. And we ship you the entire curriculum. It's all packaged together.
You mean shipping you over the internet? So
yeah. But we have students in 6 of the 7 continents. If anybody wants to move to Antarctica and take our program, I can say 7 of the 7 continents, but we're not there yet. In all 50 states in our program.
But Gary, if I may too,
yes.
Online's got a negative connotation in a lot of places. Like our hybrid active learning model, we don't do online like anybody either. So all of our online we have live professors for every single student. They have live online lectures, live online office hours as well. Now, those are recorded for those people who can't make it, but we make sure a student can have the in-classroom experience in their living room. The only difference that they will ever have is they see their professor over Zoom instead of face-to-face. Short of that, everything's exactly the same as our face-to-face stuff.
Do you have a question? You have a question up here?
I just wondered what the degrees were that are offered, undergraduate and graduate too?
So we have an undergraduate degree in cyber operations. It's got 3 different tracks. There's an engineering track, and those are the cyber Jedi, right? Those are the people that the government is trying to get, and Apple's trying to get, and everybody. And they're very rare. But then we also have a defense and forensics track, which is what you would think a cyber person was. It's kind of the guys hands on keyboards, right? The defenders, the forensic specialists, the CTI specialist, the penetration testers. But then we also built a law and policy track, because what we found is that if you're too technical and can't speak to humans, sometimes as a chief information security officer or as an advisor, you're not really effective communicating. So, and then we also found if you're just a great CEO, but you don't know anything about technology, you're pretty much useless in that job too. So we have built a degree program that has one foot in the technical camp. They do all of the front-end components for the defense and forensics, and the other one in the business camp, the regulatory law, the privacy law, you know, the ethics, and you know, all of the things that you would need to do over there. So you have a professional that can not only know what actually happened, speak to the other professionals, but understand the limitations and capabilities of how to respond as well, and be able to drive those organizations. Now, we do have a new master's degree coming out as well.
Yeah, so we are launching in the fall, as long as the Board of Regents approves it for us, coming up in their April meetings. We will have a brand new Master's of Science degree in Cyber and Information Operations that Josh Pauli's team will be directing from our college. And we were talking about this morning, we are working on the first PhD in cyber at the University of Arizona that will probably launch in 2025. Right. So as we build that out. So that's just the beginning. We offer, you know, degrees beyond cyber. We have an applied computing degree. We have an intelligence studies degree. We got the regional commerce degree. We have a leadership degree. We have a human services degree. We really do try to embrace the social and technological pieces of cybersecurity in all facets of 21st century living in the college. And finally, we offer certificates. We have the most popular certificates at the University of Arizona at the undergraduate level. Undergraduate certificates typically don't have a lot of people in them. We have 450 people in our certificates alone. And most of them are in the cyber side of our college. We offer some on the non-cyber programs, but most of them are in cyber, and they are usually career professionals that are trying to add a cyber credential to their already current jobs. Right. So we have a lot of people who are looking at cyber credentials, and what they get, it's stackable. It's 6 of our courses packaged together for a specific purpose. But they can then take that if they want to, if they don't have their bachelor's degree and they want to get one, they can build one. We will do the same thing at the master's level after we launch our master's degree this fall.
Right, and those undergraduate and soon-to-be graduate certificates are not certifications, right? Those are 18 credit hours and so forth. But the great thing is, too, is you look back to that training, and again, not a negative comment on SANS, but if you were going to go to a 1-week course and take that training, by the time you take the certificate test and you travel to it, even if it's local, it's going to cost you about $10,000 to $12,000 for one week of training. Our undergrad certs, 18 credit hours, 6 courses delivered fully online, completely hands-on with live professors, $9,000. So now you can be a non-degree seeking person that has an anthropology degree, but you want to add cyber to this, and you can get real skills just by going through one of our certificates.
We're trying to put that out more, especially in education, because we'd love to see more K-12 teachers be cyber capable so they could actually help teach their students about cyber, because we need that input on the front end. And so we're working programs all over the state of Arizona right now to try and get more of that going as well. All right, probably time for a couple more before we're going to run out of time, and we'll take a quick break. Somebody's got to stump Jason here. You got to come up with a really good question.
I was to understand there's going to be no math today. So
Here's one right up here.
okay.
Do you partner with any outside certification providers to bring skills, professional training into your university system that might not be readily available? So, for example, I provide ICF credentialed coach training, which is big in the cyber world right now.
So right now, I've stood up, under Gary's leadership here, the Cyber Convergence Center. Now, the academic programs don't have any certification or training components added to them. Now, we do have something called CAPE, which is our continuing education programs. Some of that is done there, but my center has a mandate to also look at advanced curriculum and advanced things like new certificates, certifications, and things like that. So my center might do some of that, depending on the value to our students and our student body and things like that. But the standard 8140 or DoD certifications, some of that is done currently in our continuing education at the university.
Yeah, and to extent, I'm of the opinion. Let's talk. I mean, partnerships are
Absolutely.
great. I mean, our whole focus in our panel is this idea of team of teams, and that's just not the cyber team of teams. As Jason set up, that's all of us. We're all in this, and so we talk to a lot of people from very diverse backgrounds and programs. I'd be happy to chat with you about what you're doing and what we're doing, because we do have the capability to partner across the university with our continuing professional education team, with our team, with community colleges, because we are transfer college. We work a lot with community colleges where a lot of that certification testing happens, not with us, but tends to be with them. So, but that stream of partnerships is what's going to make this all work for us in the long run. So
Right.
absolutely open to any and all conversations.
And that's important too, because if you look at the number of jobs that are open, let's pretend for a second Josh could get 25,000 graduates a year. Gary would be really happy about that. I'm sure the president would too. But it would only take about 23 years to fill that gap at this point. So we can't do it ourselves, right? What we can do is extend what we do and how we do it and our environment to help people do it, to make it more real world. But teaming with people is 100% necessary. This is a team sport. You cannot do it on your own. The scale is too large.
Is there one more? Yes.
It's loud, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
My nephew's been recruited to play basketball, wheelchair basketball. The University of Arizona gives scholarships for that, and he's very good, and he's going to be a freshman there next year. We're very proud of him, full scholarship. But he doesn't know, as most college seniors, I asked him what he's going to major in. I'd really like him to know about this cyber track. Does he just talk to the coming
Yes.
from an aunt's not great. Coming from a counselor, how would I direct him that way?
So, are they still standing out there? I saw them earlier. We have two professors who are standing right back here at our display. So if you go, this is for anybody if you're interested, if you just go right back into this back corner, back over here, you'll see this thing looks like a big computer, bunch of numbers going up and down on it. There's a couple of professors sitting there. They have the handouts with information of how to get to our college, and they can help with that. And we've talked about transfer students. Is Julie Katzel still standing out there? I don't see her anymore. She's here working the Wonderhouse with us from the U of A. Her son is in our program. He went to the U of A for 2 years as a traditional on-campus full-time student, couldn't figure out what he was going to major in. Mom finally said, come on, we got to figure this out. And he is on campus, but taking our online program while we're there. So we have that capability to do that for anyone. So
And
absolutely.
if I could add to that, as the department head, I routinely met with 5, 7, 10 students every single week to just give them the details they wanted one-on-one. I'm sure my predecessor Josh is going to do the same thing. That's something really interesting at University of Arizona. You actually get real humans that are going to talk to you. You don't have to just go to a website. Our website will tell you all about it too, but we will contact you. You can even have my business card if you want, and we'll talk directly to him and let him know what he needs to know.
All right, well, I'm going to close this up. And he's going to be mad at me for what I'm about to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. I want you to, as he walks off the stage, which you're going to do in a second, because he's an Army guy. He follows orders really well, most days. But everything you just saw came out of that guy's head right there. He built this program. He built the environment. He created this capability. It is what has brought us here today. So I cannot thank Jason enough for the work he's done to get us here. So give him a big round of applause if you don't mind.